he says in the future, nurses will be paid more than doctors, which is a provocative way of saying that the human touch side of the profession will be paid more than the brainiac side, which is sort of analyzed. Do you buy that?
Well, I don't know about the nurse versus doctor, but what I do know, what I do believe, and I think the data supports this, is that still humans need to sense empathy. And you sense empathy from other humans. There's probably microfacial elements, there's voice. And in the end, empathy is what creates trust. And so no matter how far we go with the AI generated models, I'm skeptical that we can replace that human element of trust. People always ask us, why do you still need 25,000 sales representatives around the world visiting doctors? So we did the experiment. We said, let's try to use algorithms. Let's try to use digital engagement tools. None of it works. Because at the end of the day, when you're trying to have a physician change their behavior, in order for them to treat a patient who's putting their trust in that physician, they need to trust the person delivering the message. So you can enable that sales rep with AI tools. Right. But the physician needs to feel trust, and that only comes from that human-human interaction. So actually, it's interesting. We're not going to reduce our sales forces at all. We're going to give them AI tools, but we need them even more to cut through all of the technical noise to build that relationship.
So Andy, back to you on this issue of what does this do to the healthcare industry? Because it cannot be that it will massively increase productivity without reducing headcount. In other words, these are basically two sides of the same coin, correct?
No, not necessarily. Let me give you another path, which is that we can do a lot more healthcare with the same population. For example, I was just looking at the data. James and his fellow hyperscalers, these companies right at the frontier of AI, are still growing their workforces, even though they have access to the absolute best tools to automate the heck out of software engineering and skyrocket the productivity of people. They still have a lot of people. Why? Because they're in a nasty competitive battle with each other, and they're able to do so much more per day that when the competition is also doing a lot more per day, backing off on that is a really bad idea.
Let me push you on that. You say there's a mental health AI counselor, right?
Yeah.
That you're going to introduce. I know of an agentic nurse, a company that has put forward an agentic nurse, and same thing. There are not enough nurses in the world.
Yep.
There's no question, however, that you are puncturing the price umbrella. You are, your nurse, your healthcare counselor costs $1 an hour, whereas the human one costs 50, 70, and 100, you are lowering the price, which has to have an effect on employment, right?
Econ 101 says another thing that might happen is you'll increase demand for the service when the price craters. Well, you can do a lot more healthcare if it costs a lot less. As you're doing a lot more healthcare, I think there's a high likelihood that you'll still need to involve people in that role. Did I get the Econ 101 right?
No, I was going to make a similar point, but let me make it in a different way. What do most people say about their experience going to the doctor? I was rushed in there. I spent 10 minutes with my doctor. They were busy on a keyboard, and we talked for a few minutes, and I was out of there.
And I filled out a piece of paper before I walked into the office.
Right. So I think one of the exciting possibilities here is not so much a reduction in personnel and so forth, but actually a shifting of how people spend their time. Think about the amount of time, and that there's been studies that have looked at this that are counting the amount of keyboard work that's being done when you're in front of your doctor, or somebody behind the scenes. So think about doing away with all of that and actually allowing the time to build the kind of trust that Vas was talking about. I think this is one of the things that could actually transform healthcare, and think about making that available to everybody, except beyond just people in this room.
Andy, when you think about the broader kind of societal implications of these kinds of things, do we have any parallels to look at that help us understand what people are going to be doing? It's famous people say about technology, you can never predict the kind of jobs that are going to be created. And I think that's exponentially true of AI.
You asked if there are historical parallels. One thing that I noticed very clearly is that every time one of these extraordinarily powerful technologies comes along, every time there's a new general purpose technology that's going to transform our economies and societies, one thing that happens is a societal level freak out led by the elites about massive looming technological unemployment. It happened with the steam engine, happened with electrification, happened with the mainframe. You can just watch it happen over and over again. Meanwhile, what we continue to underestimate when we think about the phenomenon of creative destruction, we continue to underestimate the creation part, which is what you're talking about. And these tools are going to be used by innovators and entrepreneurs to do things that we literally cannot sit here and imagine what the world is going to be like 10 years hence. I still have some confidence that they're going to need people to help them realize those visions, employees, people, co-workers, and get them out there into the world.
Thanks to all of you for being part of my program this week. I will see you next week.
9 on CNN.